write the narrative question power paper. So you'll get given 2 bullet points to help you with this. So this example is write a narrative account analysing the key events of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Now this is essentially a story. This is a narrative question where you have to talk about the causes, the event itself, and then the consequences of it, analysing it using words where you are looking at whether it's makes situations worse, makes it better. I'll kind of go through some examples of this kind of words in a second. So like I said, you get given 2 bullet points, and most of the time these will be 2 bullet points which could be part of either the start, the middle, or the end. And I'll again show you in a sec what that looks like. So mark scheme, you have very similar AOs to the previous question. The consequence question, you have AO1, which is your subject knowledge, and then you have AO2, which is talking about an explanation of consequence or cause or change, how something was impacted by another event or another person or thing. So you identify, you then obviously describe. We're talking about our AO1s. And then you are explaining with clear link between each of the sequences of events. So there is a clear connection and a link between your start, middle, and end events that you're talking about. So it's a story of an event. You are not writing this in first person, just to kind of clarify, because I've had a few examples of students that have done that. You are not writing as if you are there, okay? So what you would do in an exam is you would just kind of quickly plan this out, perhaps. So this example here is write a narrative account of detente during the 1970s, and you're given 2 bullet points, SALT and Afghanistan. Now the question is talking about detente, so you are clearly going to be trying to talk about the positive things that happened during the 1970s. And we know that Afghanistan was obviously where detente ended. So this automatically you would know would be your end event. SALT, because it's one of the big kind of significant events, you maybe would want to put that in the middle, and Afghanistan you would save to the end. So you're analysing this period of time known as detente. So you would have a start, so perhaps it would be about how relationships start to get better because of Vietnam. You could talk about post Cuba. You've got lots of events that we've kind of talked about with regards to this early part of detente. You would then perhaps put SALT in the middle, or if you can think of another event, perhaps 1975 with Helsinki. And then you would end in Afghanistan. So you would talk about why Afghanistan ended, it kind of deteriorated the relationship. Detente basically stopped. Okay. So here's an example of one of these questions. This is an 8-mark answer. A narrative account of the Hungarian uprising. So again, following the same structure that we have been using for the previous questions. So each paragraph, you need 3 paragraphs, the start, the middle, and the end. The identifier here is that Imre Nagy was president. You then describe why him being president is significant to the story and explain using kind of words to link and connect. So things like here you've got, was not too happy about the situation, resulting in Khrushchev being angry. There's obviously some connection there with the next event. The middle paragraph is quite short. Like I said, this does get 8 marks because they do tick all their boxes that they need to. Imre Nagy identified as he has one-party rule. The describe would be about what that involved, and the explain would be the public were doing this because they wanted to be freed from harm from dictatorship, being a Soviet satellite state, and that then has an impact on what their final paragraph is about him leaving the Warsaw Pact. So they are all connected. There is connections here. So the end would be identifying that he's leaving the Warsaw Pact. Khrushchev rolls in the tanks, and the explain would be the other Soviet satellite states want to leave. They can't. Khrushchev is in a stronger position. That's all connected to this idea of an analysis. Just a very quick summary then. This is how we are structuring it. These are some examples of some keywords for you to use, some process words. Like I said, the bullet points will usually be a start event, but that's not necessarily the case. But the 2 bullet points will represent like either your start, your middle, or your end, one of into 2 of those 3. You have to include information of your own, so don't just depend on those 2 bullet points. You have to add a third. So I would almost do like a small table in the start of your exam when you're planning out what you're going to write. Write down what your start event is, write down what your middle event is going to be and what your end is going to be. And then you have these connections, okay, these connection words. So began, became, developed, realised, changed, intensified is a really good one, deteriorated, reinforced, worsened. There's lots of things that you could talk about, but that is your analysis. Okay, it's very hard to say when you've got a cold. So that is what you are going to need to do. And you would want to spend about 20 to 25 minutes. I know I've put 15 here, but because you are going to get an extra 5 minutes for this paper, this is the question where you perhaps might want to do that. So if you can stick to these timings, that's great. So 5 minutes on each of your paragraphs. Okay, but if you do spend longer, I think this is probably the question where you might want to spend those extra few minutes, if you do have them, to make sure you've clearly analysed each of the events, connected them, the impact that each of them had, and how they are connected. Okay, there we go.